In this video, I'll be sharing with you a simple bust caging technique for your caged cup corsets. So if this is something you like, kindly hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So I've drafted my cupped corset already, so I'm just going to use the pattern and I'll be transferring it. Now I'm using a 3-part corset for this. I will go ahead to measure up and I'll cut it as one piece and then place the other cup. Now for the main piece of this cup, I'm using a Mikado fabric and I'll iron and stay. While for the caged part of this cup, I'll be ironing a collar gum or a peplum stay to it. So what I'm going to do now is to place my cup and I'm going to transfer ½ inch all the way around the cup. I'm going to mark ½ inch both at the upper part of this cup and then at the lower part of the cup. This will serve as a joining allowance for your cup. So after marking this, I'll go ahead to mark for the lower part also. Then I'll now go ahead to cut this out. So after cutting this out, I'll also use this to transfer or cut out for the part where we'll be using for the bust caging. But for that part, I'll have to iron a peplum stay to it first before going ahead to like ironing it or doing the caging on it also. So after cutting out, this is what I have. I'll place and I will cut out another piece for the cup for the lining part. Here is my peplum stay. We have the light one and the hard one, so I'm using this one that is not so hard. And what I'll do is to place this pattern on it and I'm going to trace this out. Since I have already added ½ inch, all I'll do is just to go ahead to trace it out. After tracing it out, I'll now go ahead to iron this peplum stay on it. So this peplum stay will give it more stability and make it easier for you to cage your cup. So this is what I have now. All I'll do is just to notch the part where I will join so that it will be easier for me to join this up, and I'll open it up and then go ahead to place, and there's a shiny part of the peplum stay or collar gun, whatever you call it, and I'll place and go and stitch. So make sure that you label your cup, that way it is easier to identify your cup so that you don't mistakenly join one to the wrong side, right? So this is me placing my cup, and so that it will be easier for me to identify when I want to join my cup. And I'll also go ahead to join this and also join this at the other side, right? So this is what I have at this point. That is after joining it, and I'll go ahead to iron my peplum stay on it, right? Then we'll now go ahead to start caging the cup. Now let's start joining our cup. I'm going to start by joining the lining part, the one that we ironed a peplum stay on. So this is the one that we are going to actually cage. Also want to carefully pin this, right? You're going to carefully pin this to the end. Now you'll be joining this part. To join it, you're going to add ½ inch starting from the upper part all the way towards the lower part of your pattern. So go ahead to stitch this with ½ inch on the sewing machine. Now I'm going to go ahead to start stitching this. I will join. So for this pattern, I'll be using one side of the cup to show you or work on, because if you're trying to like join both sides when I'm videoing, this class will be longer and it might take you much data. So I'll just be working on one side of the cup, and whatever I do here, you also repeat it at the other side. So now you want to join the upper part to the lower part of your corset. You can as well label this so that you don't get confused, or join another pattern to another one. Now pin the two edge of your cup together, right? So when you pin it together, you can now go ahead to place this and make sure that it matches, right, before going ahead to stitch. If it doesn't match, or you feel one side of the cup is bigger than the other, you can easily notch it so that it can relax. So mine is actually meeting, and I'll go ahead to join this. After you're done pinning, you're now going to go ahead to mark half inch all the way around. This half inch will be serving as a guide to join your cup. So this part of the corset we are working on is the part that has the peplum stay. This is the part where we'll be doing our bust caging. Make sure you mark half inch on top, and then you're going to use it as a guide when joining your cup. That is the cup part of your corset. So I'll just go ahead to sew. Now, to reduce time that we're going to spend in sewing, I'll be working with one side of the cup and I'll be explaining to you. So whatever we do on this cup, we're going to repeat it on the other side. Now we're working on the lining part, right? This is the part that we're going to cage. So I'll be working with one side of the cup. So anything I do here, I'm also going to do to the other side, right? So I'll just be working with one side of the cup to show you and join the other. Now we are working on the main fabric. Now you notice the difference. Here we just have an stay, while the other one we ironed stay and peplum stay to it. This is to give that lining part more stability because we're going to add boning to it. Now place your cup and you're going to also pin it down and measure half inch round it. So this will serve as a guide to joining your corset. So after marking out, I'm also going to connect this. So I'm going to stitch this also with half inch, but before stitching, I'll just go ahead to pin this down. So after joining, this is what I have, and we're going to introduce the upper part of the corset to it, and I'll go ahead to also pin. So I'm going to start by pinning the edge. So after pinning this, I'm going to pin the other side. Now after pinning it, you want to make sure that it matches very well and it relaxes very well. Now go ahead to mark half inch all the way around, which will serve as the joining allowance to this cup, and you're going to stitch it out. Remember when cutting out this cup, we added extra half inch on top. Now we're going to go ahead to stitch out that part. So after stitching this up, this is what I have for this side. Now I'll also go ahead to join the other side of my cup. I'll go ahead to trim out the half inch we have inside it, and I'll be doing it on the main pattern and also on the part we are going to cage. Next thing you're going to do is to iron. Now you're going to take your time to do this because you're molding your cup. So you're going to also iron out both the main cup and the one that you're going to cage. So this will take you like little time, and you have to like trim out the excess and iron this out very well. It is very important for you to iron your cup, right? So after ironing, this is what I have. This is the part that we're going to actually cage. Now if you're not okay with what you have to go ahead to iron again. Have to iron again because this ironing is very important at this part because you're molding your cup, right? So after ironing this, we're going to iron the main fabric also. After ironing this, you're going to iron the main part where you ironed stay on. Now also make sure you trim out the excess before ironing. Now I'm just going to iron this and also mold it out. So note, if you don't iron very well, your cup might turn out flat and it will not be okay for caging. Now you also want to iron from the right side after ironing all the way from the inside part or the rough part of your corset cup. Now, before going ahead to sew your boning on your cup for caging, you have to like mark out the areas where you'll be caging. So I'm marking 0.5 inches round your cup. Now, depending on the shape of the cup you have to like follow it round, follow the shape you have and mark half inch or 0.5, which is the same, round your cup. Now after this, go ahead to connect. Now I'll go ahead to blend out the line. There are different types of bust caging technique. So for this particular class, I'll be using a very beginner friendly method. This will save you from the stress of your cup coming out flat. So now I'm going to use the slanted line method, right? There are several methods whereby you can use like a curvy line or horizontal line. Like there are different techniques, but I'm using this slanted style line for this particular corset, right? So after connecting to this point, I'll start from this second part and I'll extend this to the side and also pick the other side, and I'm going to go ahead to extend it. Now, if you're working for a bigger bust, you want to go ahead to add more lines to this caging because there's more volume of bust, so you want to cage it in a way that it can hold or carry your bust. Now we're going to sew our boning. Now the boning we are using is the 0.3 inches boning. If you're having issues why boning or sewing boning to your cupped corset, or whenever you sew it, it comes out flat, please avoid any boning that is very large, right? Any sewable boning that you're going to use, make sure it's on the smaller size. This type of boning can easily bend or adjust to any curve line that you want to work on. Now you're going to place that first boning and you're going to follow the first circular line round your cup. So I'm going to start by sewing the first boning on the first line, that is round that line that we have, which is 0.5 inches above our or above the starting point of this cup. Now when you're sewing this, you notice that this 0.35 boning is easily bendable or it can easily adjust to any shape of your choice. After stitching to the end, I'll go ahead to cut this out. Next step is to stitch on the upper part of the cup. Now for your boning, go ahead to place it from this part, tuck it into this side, and then you're going to start stitching at the upper part. Now the size of the boning we are using is 0.3 inches boning. Then tuck it into this other side and go ahead to stitch. So this is what I have already, and I'll now go ahead to follow the lines that we have on the cup. So the next one is to go ahead to tuck this into your cup this way, right? The first slanted line that you're going to stitch on. Now you're going to stitch on the sides of your boning. Now if you look at your boning, there's a side that you can easily stitch on. Now when stitching and you're getting to this point, you have to like cut this out, right? You're going to cut this out and you're going to tuck it in. Now you can raise your sewing machine footer and you're going to raise this part of your boning and tuck this new one into it, right? Then go ahead to stitch. After stitching this first line, go ahead to stitch on the other side of it also, right? You're going to sew on the two sides of the boning. Now after stitching on the two sides of this boning, we're going to introduce another boning to it this way. Now we're going to slant it towards this side. Now what we're trying to do is to give stability to this side, and then later we'll be crossing over to create this slanted effect on both sides. So this method is actually easier to you cage your cup. And I'm just going to stitch this. Now raise your machine foot and then cut it out. Then tuck it into it this way. Raise that first one. So if you have your nails on, it's easier to actually pull this and tuck it in. Then stitch. Now roll it over to the other side and then you go ahead to stitch also to this point. Now after stitching, this is what we have, right? So you see our cup is coming out already. So just like I said, this method is actually very easy without much stress. Now we are introducing a boning to this side also. Now when placing your boning, do not place it in a flat way, right? Try to push it out so that your cup will not really come out flat. And you're going to follow that slanted curve towards this other side, and then go ahead to cut out and lift up your machine foot and go ahead to cut this out and tuck it in. Now go ahead to continue stitching. When you get to this point, turn it to the other way and stitch to the end where it actually meets the other boning that you have at the top. Now also go ahead to cut out the excess threads that you have while sewing your boning. Now I'll fix this other part into it this way, and I'll start stitching. Right now, just like I said, when you're placing your boning, please do not place it in a flat way, and make sure it is not straight. Try to slant it following those lines. Now push your boning in while sewing. Now I'll go ahead to open this and tuck it in, then stitch on the other side of the boning to the end. Now we are done stitching, and this is what we have. We are going to iron this out. Stitch round the first and the second boning that you added to your cup. So after stitching around your cup, the next is to flesh it. So there are different ways to flesh your cup. You can use 3 to 5 layers of your cotton stay, or you can use your fiber. So I'll be using my fiber to do this, and I'll be using like 2 layers of it to flesh my cup. Now your cup should not be flat either ways, whether you push it to the right side or towards the wrong side. It should not be flat at all from each side. So I'll just go ahead to place layers of hemming gum on my cup, and after that I'll go ahead to place like layers of hemming gum also on the fiber, and I'll fold it into two and iron. So you're going to iron very well here. You also need to put your tellus arm and start ironing. Now if you don't have a steam iron, you can go ahead to sprinkle a little water on it. We're going to sprinkle a little water on it so that it can iron properly or easily. So just go ahead and continue ironing until your fiber sticks very well to your cup. So after ironing, what I'll do is to go ahead to trim out the excess I have around this cup. Then after trimming it out, you know that ½ inch round your cup, you're going to go ahead to trim it out. After trimming out, you're going to iron. You're going to iron from inside and outside. This is to shape your cup and to make sure that you get a desired cup that is not flat. So after this, sprinkle little water, and you still have to like mold out your cup. You have to do a lot of ironing with this process. Then I'll just go ahead to iron out. After that, after ironing to your desired shape for your cup, you have to go ahead to now cover it with the main fabric. So here's my cup. If I push it in this way, it's still deep, and if I push it to the other side, it's still deep. So to avoid staining your fabric, place another piece of fabric on it, and you now go ahead to iron and also mold out. So just like I said, you have a lot of ironing to do with this. So after I'm done ironing out, what I'll now do is to go ahead to place that other fabric, that is the main fabric, and you're going to pin, which you're now going to stitch or turn your cup. So what you do now is to go ahead to mark ½ inch at the upper part of your cup, and you go over to the sewing machine to stitch on this ½ inch line that you marked out. After stitching, go ahead to trim it out close to the ½ inch that you sewed. Please do not trim off all to the extent of trimming your sewing, just very close to your sewing. Go ahead to trim it off, and you now flip it to the other side. So while flipping it, if it's difficult, just push out your cup this way and then now turn it to the other side. When you now turn it to the other side this way, it's easier to turn this way. Now you can go ahead to pin round your cup. Go ahead to pin your cup all the way around. So after pinning it, make sure that what you have on the main cup aligns. So you can now go ahead to push it out. This is the easiest way to like push out your cup, right? To avoid dragging the upper part to meet the lower part of your corset cup. So this is what I have. There are several ways to attach this on your corset cup, right? So you can go ahead to run a stitch around it and use the bias method to attach it, or you can go ahead, fold it in with ½ inch, and then attach it to your cup. This is the final result of what we have. So I'll just go ahead and iron. I'll go ahead to iron it and make sure it sits very well. So go ahead to place your Telos ham in between your cup this way, and this is what I have after I was done caging. And see how deep my cup is, and then you go ahead to attach it to your corset.